What's up guys, welcome to Talking Poodoo, a Star Wars show where today I'm reviewing Season 2 of Star Wars Resistance, the final season of Star Wars Resistance. This season, Kaz and the rest of the crew Colossus are looking for a new place to call their home while also trying to catch up with the Resistance. So what did I think of this season? Well, simply put, I think it's a little bit better than the first season, and that's probably the best thing I can say about this because I did not like the first season. The problem with the first season is that it was aimed at a younger audience in comparison to things like Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And one of the problems with that is there is a larger, older audience for Star Wars things. So when you do a canonical story that's specifically targeting a very particular audience, you're kind of alienating the rest. So I felt alienated with the first season. This season is better that way on. There is still a child-friendly, kid-focused approach to things, but there's also much more darker, more serious storylines in there as well. And it's perfectly fine to do a show that's kid-focused and child-friendly, but to make it a canonical show, make it such an important part of the canon, is problematic. And that's another way in which this season improves on it, in that this season does feel a bit throwaway. It doesn't feel essential, it doesn't feel important. So much so that it's happening right off in the distance, away from the Resistance and the First Order for most of it, focusing on unique individual characters, not in the films. So you could totally not see this show and be perfectly fine with what's going on in the Star Wars canon. It doesn't add much to the canon, if anything, to be honest. But because it is a child show, because it is a children's TV show focusing on a younger audience, it's still got that childish humour that was in Season 1. Now, this season I think it does do a better job of explaining why the characters are the way they are, why they are so childish, why they are so stupid. Is it an act? Is it not an act? It delves into that a little bit more. And I think the humour this season works much better than it did in the first season. But it still doesn't always work. It still comes across as like Jar Jar Binks style humour, where it is there for the sake of being there, and it just comes across as cheesy and corny at times. It's hard to believe that the characters are actually saying and doing these things in this world that's supposed to be fairly grounded and believable despite the science fiction fantasy elements. But this season I said that the story is all about them trying to catch up with the Resistance and find a new place for the Colossus. Yes, but in the process of doing that, there's a lot of standalone episodes this season. The overarching narrative is pretty slim, to be honest. There's basically, they start from point A, they're looking for point B. That's it. And then you've got like the villainous characters who are trying to track them down. That's all there really is in the overarching narrative. It's very simplistic, very basic. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what that means is a lot of the episodes are just standalone little adventures that they go on. And a lot of the adventures that they go on, it seems to be very coincidental, where they find this place, something bad's happening, they've got to solve the bad thing happening. There's very little originality in a lot of the stories going on, very little excitement going on, very little new stuff going on, and that's disappointing. But there are some enjoyable elements in there, and it is the episodes that are part of the overarching narrative that are the best of this season, when they are dealing with the First Order, when they're trying to get their ultimate goal out of this. Those are the episodes that work best. But in relation to this, the episodes that are standalone are very repetitive. So you've got episodes where they are going here to destroy this thing, or they're going here to take and get this resource that they need, or they're looking for this thing. It's very by the books basic stuff going on. It is over and over and over again, just slightly different with different characters, different locations, but it is the same basic story repeating itself, it seems. But as the final season, how does this wrap things up? Because it is only 2 seasons, which is unusual for a Star Wars TV show. Well, I think it does a decent job of wrapping things up. It gives the characters a degree of closure, and it established what the show was trying to be about. But to be honest, I don't think this was meant to be the final season. I think heading into this season, they were not planning on this being the end. I think they wanted more. So when it comes to the final few episodes, you feel like they're kind of rushing to get things into place, particularly in the very last episode when they are establishing where everyone is. All of a sudden, everyone's coming together. It feels pretty rushed in certain regards. And then as for the closure, it feels like there's still some untold stories there with certain characters. Like, without going into spoilers, for example, Kaz the main character of this show, he does make a decision, he does decide where he wants to belong, but it's not like definitive cutting things off from the other option. So there's still room there for more stories and more adventures for him and other characters in this show. And I think that's all because they had so much they wanted to explore in this show that they couldn't cram into this one season. So to move on and talk a bit more about the characters now. The problem with this show is that the characters are, again, it's a children's show, so the characters are still a little on the childish side. Despite the fact that they're meant to be grown adults, they're meant to be very intelligent, capable individuals. Kaz, for example, one of the criticisms I had for season 1 is that he's supposed to be this pilot or spy in the Resistance. So he's supposed to be capable, he's supposed to be intelligent, he's supposed to be able to do all this stuff, and yet he's just a complete idiot. And this season delves into that. It actually starts to poke fun at that and starts to realise that, which is great. But at the same time, he's still an idiot. He's still childish. And it feels like he's at odds with this world that they've established. And while they do try to give you some explanation for it, the explanation often is, oh, he's just an idiot. So that's not really satisfying. And this applies to some of the other characters as well, who are meant to be adults. They are meant to be very capable, intelligent people who are meant to be like pilots and spies and soldiers and so on. And yet they're acting like children. It's a little bizarre. But the big problem with the characters this season is that a lot of them just aren't that interesting. It feels like a lot of them don't have a lot to do or say. They're just kind of there. And there's a lot of them that are filling in these archetype roles of pilot, spy, fighter, soldier, father, stuff like that. There's not really much more to them than that, which is disappointing. It makes it really hard to root for them and what they're doing. So one of the notable things about this season's characters is that in season 1 you had like Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma showing up from the movies, being voiced by Oscar Isaac and Gwendolyn Christie. This season that doesn't happen. In fact, you get the characters from the movies. You get Captain Phasma, you get General Hux, and slight spoilers here, you get Kylo Ren. But none of them are voiced by the actors from the movies. So why was that? Was that scheduling? Was that budget reasons? The voices that they've got are perfectly fine, I think, but it's noticeably just not them. So that's odd. Why do it one way in season 1 and then a different way in season 2? Yeah, I'd like to know that. It's not a bad thing, it's just something I want to point out. But ultimately, this is a show that's focusing much more on the gags, the jokes, and the action than it is on the characters and the story. Which is fine, it makes for sometimes exciting, fun viewing. But it does mean that it's just lacking a bit of depth in certain key areas. To talk about the production though, the animation. The animation is probably going to be the most divisive thing about this show. It's on an initial viewing, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And the more I watch this show, the more I dislike the way that it looks. The actual animation style, everything just looks too shiny and too bright. It's really weird. But then at the same time, they've really simplified the look of certain things, and it just doesn't look, some things don't look real or believable. Often enough, the environments and the lighting looks gorgeous. The actual places and locations are great. But then the characters don't always look like they're fitting into that. It looks like they've got one artist doing the locations and another artist doing the characters, and they don't always mesh well. So yeah, the animation, not a huge fan of it. It works, it's very passable, but it's just not great, I don't think. And it's not so much the actual animation as it is the art design. But luckily the episodes are short and quick. Some of them I have to think are less than 20 minutes. So they do fly by often enough. They get the point across well enough. The soundtrack and the score is great. It's Star Wars soundtrack and scoring. There's some really good motifs in there as well. And it really does elevate some of the moments and emotional elements of this show quite well. I'm not going to go into spoilers. There really isn't too much to say about this show. Like I said, the story and the characters are lacking a little bit of depth. So there's not a lot to expand upon. And also because there's not a lot actually going on that's key or important to the Star Wars canon, there's just not a lot to say. So this is kind of a throwaway adventure in the Star Wars universe. It's just not a brilliant adventure. I do think this season's better than season 1. I would say maybe watch the beginning and end of season 1 and then go into this season and watch the key episodes here. You'll probably have a good time, a much better time than you would if you watched it all in one. So yeah, do I recommend this show? Not quite. If you like children's animation shows, then by all means go for it. If you like Star Wars, by all means go for it. But it's not going to be for everyone. It's going to be divisive. And I think the fact that I'd only got 2 seasons is kind of saying something about the reception this show got. I don't think people were talking about this show much. I don't think people were viewing this show much. And the actual reception of the show, I think, was primarily mixed at best. So yeah, that's Star Wars Resistance Season 2. That's been this episode of Talking Poodoo, a Star Wars show. I'm Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. But most importantly, subscribe to my channel if you want more content like this. Click the bell as well to be notified when I post content like this. In the age of coronavirus and all that stuff going on, who knows when I'm going to be posting stuff. Obviously, not much going on in the cinemas right now, so fewer film reviews going on. But yeah, until next time, thanks for watching.